This whole video is a complete mess. And I'm usually a mess, but this one is the worst mess that I have ever filmed in my entire life. You're welcome. Good luck. Let's go.
What we do here is go back.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It feels so weird filming. I think it's been about 3 weeks that I filmed and 2 weeks since I've last uploaded. So it's been a while. I feel weird. Everything that's going on in the world has had me just unmotivated and down and just like everybody else. So yeah, I've been prolonging filming, but here we are. We're gonna do this today. First video back is going to be my May wrap up. So let's just jump right into my May wrap up. For the month of May, I read a total of 7 books, technically 8, but not. I had my first DNF of the year, my first actual DNF period. Like, I was contemplating going back and reading the book maybe in the future, but I don't think I will be doing that. So I'm going to start with my DNF. I'm going to start my video on a negative. So I DNF'd Bunny by Mona Awad. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce that, and I probably should have been more prepared. But I'm going to say Awad because that's how I've been saying it this whole entire time. I read this for a bunny read with Rain and a couple of other girls. Rain brought this readathon together. To what? Brought this readathon together and we just co-hosted with her. We had the live show. I will link the live show down below. I did not care about anything in this book. I was bored. I was confused. A lot of the girls that I read this book with said how it felt like an acid trip, and that's how it felt. I got a lot of Alice in Wonderland vibes in the sense of when she goes down the rabbit hole and everything there is just like this dream weirdness, but darker, obviously. We're following a group of girls and they call themselves Bunny, and they have like rituals and they can do weird things, and that's almost all I can say because I got 190 pages in, so that far in. I still have my bookmark on there, and I just didn't care anymore. I didn't care to find out what the deal was. I didn't care to find out what they were doing, what they were thinking, or what was going on. The characters just seemed like they were just annoying, to be completely honest with you. Again, I will link that live show down below so you could get maybe other perspectives because mine is just non-existent. So I ended up DNFing this, and I don't think when we were doing the live show, I was like, you know, hearing the girls talk about it and, you know, coming up with the analogy of dreamlike or maybe mental health issues with our main protagonist. It made me want to read it, but honestly I'm at the point now that maybe one day I'll get to it, maybe not, but I don't see it happening. So a complete DNF for me. I know a lot of people talk good about that book and love that book, and I wanted to love it so much, but honestly I just did not care about the characters, the plot, the storyline, anything at all. So I'm not even, there's too many good books to read to focus on one that I don't want to read. I have a hard time DNFing because, well, what about if the ending is good? What about if all wraps up? But at this point right now, I have been buying so many books that I'm just looking around here and I am overwhelmed. And there's so many other books that I really want to read to be focusing on something that I just don't care about. So if that's one of your favorite books, I'm so sorry. But now let's get into the books in order of how I read them, and let's talk about some good books. First book I started the month out with was The Loop by Jeremy Robert Johnson. This is a book that comes out in September. It was a Nightworms book party, and I had so much fun with this one. Here we are dealing with a virus that has been unleashed by a corporation, and people are just kids, more teenagers, are just losing their minds. I'm gonna be honest with you, it's June 22nd and I'm a little bit lost because I haven't filmed in a while, so I don't know what to say about these books other than the rating that I gave them. Here we're following Lucy and a couple of her friends, but they one night decide to go to a party in this cave, and things just start happening in there and weirdness, and the kids almost start like becoming possessed by something and killing some of the other kids. This is happening to all the teenagers, and Lucy is just like, what is going on? She doesn't understand. They try to get out of there. They're going to their homes and they're finding bizarre things when they get back home, and the state of their parents are sort of like in this comatose kind of like brainwashed state. And they're just trying to figure things out. They're being chased by these kids that are almost like possessed. I don't want to say possessed because they're not possessed, but they almost are. And they're just trying to save the world from this chaos that's going on. I loved Lucy's character. She was just so badass, so determined to just save people and get to the bottom of it. I will say that halfway through this book, I think it was around the 150 page mark, I was a little bit bored with it because we got into some backstories and some repetitive things that were happening. And I got a little bored, but I think that only lasted like 10 or 20 pages because then it just, bam, it comes back full force. So if you find yourself, when you read this book, finding yourself a little bit bored, don't worry, keep pushing. It doesn't last long and it really picks back up. I love the teenagers in this book. Like I said, they're just so badass, and just honestly, if I would have been in a situation like this, the world would come to a stop because I don't have that hero action in me, or that sense of saving people, if that makes sense, especially trying to figure out things, and I close myself off and that's it. So if it were up to me, we would be in a lot of with the state of the world. But these teenagers were just so kick-ass. It was so fun. I highly recommend this book. I ended up giving this book 4 stars. Oh my gosh, next book I read is this little book right here, and it is The Fearing, Book 1, Fire and Rain. The whole series is called The Fearing, and then each one has a different element. Let's say book 1 is fire and rain, book 2 is water and wind, and so on. I loved this so much. By the end of it, I was itching for book 2. Here we are following teenagers again. We start off in a high school gymnasium, and there's this girl. There's some girls making fun of her, but something happens and shit hits the fan, and there's like this tornado that comes across and just breaks everything in shambles. She ends up, or some kid ends up picking her up and like taking her to safety. But when the tornado passes, it's almost like everybody is gone. They're just stuck there and they don't know what's going on. They don't see anybody in the streets. And there's some weird occurrences. But then we switch to other points of views. So there are, if I'm not mistaken, 3 points of views. Again, I read this at the beginning of May, so my details are a little bit scanty in my brain. Is that a word? We go into another group of people. There's this husband and their wife, and this wife, they're on this bus. They're trying to make it somewhere, but obviously on the way there, just things start going crazy, and everywhere there's like 4 different locations. I don't know if it's 3 or 4 different locations across the United States where things are just going wrong. And we don't know. By the end of the book, we still don't know what's going on because, like I said, it goes into book 2, 3, and I believe we have book 4 and maybe book 5. I'm not completely sure, but I still don't know what's going on. I just know that something is going on, something apocalyptic is going on, and it is so gripping. It is so fast-paced. I found myself a lot, because the chapters are kind of like short, because it is a short book. I found myself like really engorging myself with a set of characters, and then it was harder for me to almost transfer into the other set of characters, like transfer my mind into the other set of characters. So it took me a little bit each time we went back and forth in between the settings or the different states. Honestly, other than that, this is a perfect little book. I don't think I just made any sense. And I don't really know what else to say. Along the ways, we are following this man that I still don't know what the purpose of his character was or is. We just know that he knows something is coming and he's almost happy about it, but he's trying to flee at the same time. So you have like this dark, sinister character. He knows what's coming and he almost knows it's like the end of the world, and he's happy about it and he wants it to be like this huge ordeal, and he's preparing for something. You just don't know what. So yeah, I really enjoyed this book. If you're going to buy this book, what I did was like, okay, I'm gonna buy book 1. I didn't think it was this tiny, so I'm like, I'm gonna buy book 1, and if I like if I really like it, I'll buy the rest of the books. Just go ahead and buy all 4 books. Do yourself that favor, because I wanted to continue as soon as I finish this. So I will eventually end up getting books 2 through 4. I think it's through 4. There might be more because I'm very eager to see what happens. I ended up giving this one 5 stars. Next in the lineup, I finally read The Woman in White. I remember reading Stranger Diaries, I believe it was a couple months ago, and this book was mentioned a few times in there, and I had it in my collection already, and I just read it in May. I actually listened to the audiobook for this, which was amazing. I loved it. This is a gothic-like ghost story. I mean, I went into it thinking it was a ghost story, so maybe that just stayed in my head. But here we are following this man. He gets an opportunity to go to this house and teach these 2 girls his art, which is painting. I believe painting in watercolors. And on his way there, like he's walking down the streets, leaving his area, and he runs into this woman in white. She seems scared. She seems antsy. She seems anxious, and she's asking him for help. She needs to get transportation. She's trying to get somewhere. She's just asking him for help, and he's sort of like, there's nobody else on the streets, just her. It's nighttime, and he sort of like is weirded out about it. He gets her to this coach or transportation. He finally gets to the transportation that she needs, and he just goes about his way, but he seems like he stays intrigued with this woman, and they do have a little bit of dialogue when they meet, and they sort of just go each on their own ways. But he comes across her again later on in the story, and it's just the mystery of who this woman in white is and what is going on. There are obviously a bunch of other characters, but where he goes, he ends up meeting one of the sisters is engaged to be married to this baron. I think it's a baron. But there's a link between the woman in white and this man, and it was so good. It's a very slow-paced story. If you're not the type of person that likes really slow-paced, thrillery, mystery, gothic kind of books, and this is not going to be the one for you. I did find that a little bit towards the end of it, I got a little bit bored, and it was almost like I was listening to it, but not almost. And even doing that, I didn't lose any of the details of the story. I ended up giving this one 4 stars. I don't know if I'm making any kind of sense, but we're just gonna continue because the next book I am obsessed with. It is my new baby. It is my new love, and I'm so thankful to Nightworms and to Death Head Press for sending this our way and for creating such a lovely thing, Death Head Press. So Death Head Press came out with this whole set of new splatter westerns. Now, I've read I've read one other western. Let's not even kid around. Prior to this book that I'm talking about, I almost showed you the book. I've only read The Gunslinger and only half of the series, and I'm obsessed. I love it so much. I did start The Sisters Brothers like last year, and I never finished it, but I was really enjoying it. And after reading this book, I have to say that I am a Western lover. I never knew that would happen. In movies, I don't like Westerns, but give me a Western book and make it horror related, and I'm all about it. I am talking about The Magpie Coffin, you guys. The Magpie Coffin. That sounded weird. And this is the first in the Splatter Western series. I've already read book 2 and I love it so much. Spoiler alert for June's wrap up. I can't believe how much I loved it. I went into this and I'm like, okay, let's read this. I like the cover. I mean, it is sick if you look at it. So the cover had me gripped. But let me tell you, this is just... I love it so much. This book is gory. It is disgusting. It is amazing. It is dark. It is savage. This book is savage. Here we are following Mr. Covington, and he is on a quest because he wants revenge. They have killed his mentor, I want to say. The person that he just went to for anything that he needed, they have killed him, and he set out for revenge. And let me tell you, when I say revenge, trust you me, there is gory revenge going on. So he sets off on this quest. He's trying to find the people that did this, and he travels long and hard. He gets himself a partner. But this is the kind of guy that really doesn't work well with others, doesn't really care for other people, and once he's done with you, like he's served his purpose with you, he just kills you. The way that he comes across his partner is that his partner knows where the people that killed his friends are. So he's just using him to get to them. And his partner knows this. He's just waiting for that when that moment comes that he murders him. But the travelings along the way and the things that he has to do or the things that he does, not that he has to do, but the things that he does to the other people as he goes finding all these people that murdered this guy is just incredible. I loved it so much. It's funny. I say it's funny, but with what I just said, it doesn't sound like it would be funny. It was just a fun time. The imagery and the goriness of it was just amazing if you're not into like blood and gore and like, I mean, there's a lot of blood and gore. I don't want to go into details because again, this is a short book as well. So I don't want to say like those, but there was one scene that I was like, gross. It was just gross. But I'm going to tell you something. This isn't the grossest book that I've read as of a couple days ago. I'm traumatized with the book that I read, but stay tuned for June, you guys, for June's wrap up, because we are in June. Whatever. So I love this book so much. I can't wait to read book 3. I do have book 3 in my possession already. Book 2 was just as good, and I can't get enough splatter Western, you guys. I just can't. And if I need to tell you that I gave if I need to tell you that I gave that book 5 stars, then you just weren't listening to all this mumble jumble that I just said about the book. But if I have to say it, I gave that book 5 stars. What did I read next? Oh, you guys. My next book, I started it actually last month and I finally finished it. And that is Cujo. I didn't like it. I just didn't like it. Now, let me go into the reasons. Because prior on going into this book, I said that I wasn't going to read it. This was part of the Chronologically King. We took a break in May. And now we're taking a break in June because of everything that's going on with Black Lives Matter. And we're trying to diversify our reading and our TBRs. So we took a break for June as well. But May, we took a break because mostly me, a lot of people weren't caught up and were just still behind with some of the books. So we took May as a catch-up month. So initially, when we were talking about reading King's books in chronological order, I knew I did not want to read this book. And the reason was because it involves a dog, a rabid dog, and I knew that this book wasn't going to end up with the dog cured. I mean, I just knew that. So to spare myself the heartache, I just told myself, just don't read it. And I wasn't going to. But I don't know why. I decided to read it. I got the audiobook, I listened to the audiobook, and I did not like it, but not because of the dog. I mean, because of the dog. But it was just such a boring damn book. I gave this book 2 stars. I know a lot of people love this book. It was boring, it was stupid, and I'm not gonna say it was stupid because obviously a lot of people like this book, but it just bored me, and it didn't. I just did not like it. Cujo was just not for me. It just wasn't. Next up, we have my other Stephen King book, which I got to read, which was Firestarter. Love this. I love this so much. This is about a man and his daughter, and they are on the run from these men that are trying to capture them. Charlie, which is his daughter, has this ability, and they are trying to capture her, to study her, and to use her as a weapon. And the dad is doing all he can to keep her safe, but obviously, as in Stephen King fashion, that always does not work out. I really did enjoy the storyline. I enjoyed the story of how we come to have Charlie with these abilities through his mom and dad. A lot of people kept saying, because I did read The Institute when it came out, and I remember reading a lot in the reviews how The Institute really reminded them of Firestarter. And I can see in the sense of the government facility and the government trying to get a hold of Charlie to use her as a weapon. And then I can see the correlation because the Institute, you have this facility where they're using these kids with special abilities. But I didn't get the same kind of feel that I did while reading. I can't see the correlation, if that makes sense. I didn't get Firestarter vibes or the Institute vibes while I was reading this, or vice versa. But I did enjoy this so much. It broke my heart. It had me rooting for Charlie, and it was just good. I ended up giving this book 4 stars. I will say though that I prefer King's newer books as opposed to his older books. I still haven't caught up with the chronologically King. You would think that I had enough time to catch up. I still haven't. I need to read The Dead Zone, and I need to finish Salem's Lot. I haven't finished Salem's Lot yet, which was one of the first books that we had to read. So I still need a couple books to read, but I can't say that I love his older or his first works. I find like kind of like a disconnect between me and the stories as to where his newer books, and I'm talking about newer books even with older books, like I think his first 5 or 6 books just, they're missing something for me and they're a little bit boring. But once you get, I mean, and even The Gunslinger, when I read it, which is our next book coming up, would be The Gunslinger. Even with The Gunslinger, I didn't like that book, and I like it now because of the development within the series. So I think that I have a harder time with his older work than with his newer. I enjoy that much more. And then the last and final book that I read for the month of May, I feel like I've been sitting here for like an hour talking about 7 books, is The Simple Wild by K.A. Tucker. I love this so much. So this was part of the Buddy Reads to Die For, that Chandra and Janelle, and now Jessica's part of the team now of it's a trio that are running the Buddy Reads to Die For. This was our read for May, and I was already wanting to read this book because Chelsea Palmer talks about this book so much, how it's one of her favorites, and it's not my usual genre, so I've always wanted to read it, but it almost got always pushed to the side, like, okay, I have so many books to read, you know, I'll get to this book eventually. So when I saw that the Buddy Reads to Die For was this book, I was like totally on it, and I am so happy that I finally read it because this is such a good book. It made me cry, it made me laugh, it made me feel so many things. And the girls actually got the author to sit with us on a Zoom call, and we got to ask her questions, and I ended up buying the second book, and I ended up buying another one of her books because I asked her, I'm like, if you can, you know, recommend your favorite book out of the books that you've read, which one would you recommend? And she talked about this one, that she loved this book so much, but she also talked about Keep Her Safe, so I ended up buying it. Spoiler alert for a book haul. And so I love this so much. Here we follow this girl, and she has been estranged from her dad for many years. When we start off the book, we start off with her mom and her as a little baby and traveling off away from her dad. And then when we start the book, the baby is already older and you're following her, and her dad lives in Alaska and her mom was sort of bored in Alaska, so she just ends up moving back to Canada with her family. And we're just following the struggles of this girl that has never really met her dad, or has met her dad and talked to him but doesn't really remember him and hasn't seen him since she was a little girl, and the brokenness that this relationship is. And she gets a phone call from a friend of her dad's saying how she needs to come and see her dad because her dad is sick. And so it's just her traveling back and reconnecting with her dad and maybe finding love. I love Jonah. Jonah is a boy that she meets when she travels to Alaska, and Jonah works with her dad. And he's the one that picks her up from the airport. Now, mind you, she doesn't know what to expect. She's heard all these negative things from her mom about Alaska. So she's like, oh gosh. So here comes this city girl to Alaska in the middle of nothing with like 2 suitcases, her heels, her, you know, and she rubs Jonah the wrong way. And it's just their whole relationship and the relationship between Kella, which is the girl, and her dad. I love this so much. This got 5 stars for me. I need to be more open to reading books that aren't in my usual genre, because this usually happens when I read a book that's not my typical genre. I can't wait to read book 2. I wanted to read it right away, but I had to order it. And when I ordered it, we were in May, so we were in the middle of all this pandemic. I mean, we still are, but I feel like mail has sort of like been back to normal in a way. So anyways, I got that book ready to read. I love this so much. I fell in love with the author and I plan to read much, much more from her books. Did that make sense? Many more of her books. Jeez. Yeah, that's it, you guys. Those were all the books that I read for the month of May. A couple of doozies, a DNF, a couple of 5 stars, a couple of 4 stars. It was a great reading month all around, besides Cujo and Bunny. Oh, look at that. The 2 books I didn't like had to do with animals. And I love animals, so there has to be something wrong here. I'm gonna stop babbling because... I'm gonna stop babbling because I'm not making sense anymore. Let me know what books you read for the month of May. What was your favorite book? Are you reading? Are you back to normal already? We're in the middle of June right now, but is your reading back to normal? I feel like mine is starting to pick up. I'm in a little bit of a reading slump right now because I was able to find a Nintendo Switch and I've been Animal Crossing my ass off. So I'm having a little bit of a hard time reading, but it's not because of anything, you know. The reading slump is from playing video games, and that's fine by me. But yeah, again, let me know what was your favorite book in the month of May. And thank you so much for watching. I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!